Minimalists.
Much of what you talk about with minimalism, such as not relying on material goods for contentment, or living in the present moment without being reactionary, I strongly identify with as I've grown up practicing Buddhism. And I was wondering if you've ever written or spoken about the similarities between Buddhism and minimalism.
You know, it's fascinating. Ryan and I have been on 9 tours in the last 10 years. We'll go out on book tours or film tours, and people will come up to us in like the hug line afterward, which, can you imagine? Hug lines. We used to hug people. You guys remember that? Anyway, people will come up to us and they say, hey, it's so great to see 2 guys out here spreading Jesus's message. And I'm like, hey, thanks. Really appreciate that. And next person, 10 people later, next tour stop. Hey, it's really great to see a couple Buddhists out here just spreading the good word. And then someone else, later in that month will be like, hey, did you guys know that Muhammad was the original minimalist? And it's like, oh, cool. And so, I think what happens is we take our belief system and then we sort of map it on to something else. Sure. But yes, I think a lot of religions, or you could go back to Stoics or whomever, they did talk about, as Julianne said, not relying on material goods for our contentment. However, it doesn't mean that we're allergic to material goods either.
Yeah, I think that for me, early on in my life, I was very much a monastic. Everything I owned, I could put into one paper bag.
Wow.
And so way before it was novel or something of cultural interest or intrigue, I was like this. And so when my wife and I were married, I wouldn't even buy us a bed. I slept on the floor. And I told her that a bed was a luxury, not a necessity.
Sorry. That still blows my mind, but keep going.
So when people talk about minimalism, I lived at an extreme level of minimalism for many, many years. And I only worked enough to eat. And which it wasn't always a good ratio. Some days I didn't even have the money to eat. I would wait to wash clothes and until I had enough change to wash clothes. I mean, I was truly minimal. And I moved across the country. I got a ride with someone. I didn't have a car. I didn't own anything. And he said, well, I don't have enough room in my car for you. And I said, for your luggage. I said, I don't have any luggage. And I moved across the country. I had no place to live, no job, no food, nothing. The clothes I had was pretty much what I wore. But a huge part of me was I despised the material world. And I don't think I had a healthy relationship with creation, because nature is a part of the material world. And I feel like I didn't understand that enjoying this life was not an evil.
Yes.
I had to come to a place where I wasn't owned by things, but I could celebrate the beauty of things. And I did have to go through an evolution of that. I had to go through a season. I remember when I went to this pastor that knew me when I was brand new in my faith, because I became a follower of Jesus as an adult. And I said, I'm thinking about getting married. And I introduced him to Kim, and he told me, Kim is perfect for you because she was an orphan. She lived in poverty. She was left starving for several weeks when she was a child at the age of 8. And that was the negative side of minimalism.
Yeah.
And he said, you would never have anything in your life, but because you love her, you're going to get things simply to take care of her.
Wow.
And I realized that also there's an expression of love that teaches you how to relate to things in a healthy way.
Right. And I think that's the key. It's in a healthy way, because I grew up really poor in Dayton, Ohio, food stamps, government assistance, and that wasn't minimalism for me because it wasn't intentional, right? And so what we're talking about now is bringing things into our lives intentionally and the things that add value, questioning the things. I think that's become the problem with consumerism. There's nothing inherently wrong with consumption. We all need some stuff. But when it becomes the driver for everything that we do, we start to lose sight. Now, Aaron, how did this rub off on you growing up underneath Erwin's reign, his tyrannical reign of not owning things?
You were different growing up, because I think you were kind of in this place where, we were definitely weren't wealthy, but we always had everything we needed. Like, I always remember having clothes, remember never being really hungry. But also, like, as I got older and obviously living in LA, like, you realize, okay, the disparity in wealth or the disparity in like lifestyle. And as we grew and as you wrote books and as things kind of, you got more successful, I realized like it's super easy to get caught up in like, what car do I drive? Where do I live? What's the zip code? You know, where do I go out to eat? Where do I do this? And I think for us, it was huge conversation of like, what's the lifestyle that you can obtain or can achieve and live at, or where do you actually feel like you're making the most effect in the world and bringing the most change and actually doing things. So it was less about how much stuff and then what are you doing with the things that you actually do have. And you always taught me that it's always what you have inside of you than the things that you can hold with your hands. And so, you know, I do drive a good car now. But I drove the same Mini Cooper until I wrecked it for however long that I could, and there are things that I grew up without, but I also never felt like I needed. And so to see it now, I think it helps me with my worldview of going like, I can be anywhere and be comfortable. I can go to a place of luxury or a place of poverty and go like, I feel at home because it's joy that I value, and it's kindness, and it's sometimes not always kindness, working on being kinder, but there's these attributes of characteristics of like people's personality, I think that I care about more than things.
I think that what's fascinating is you talked about how there's nothing wrong with pleasure. And I agree with that, as long as it doesn't get in the way of our actual contentment or joy, right? And I think one of the problems right now is we confuse pleasure. We confuse the dopamine rush with everlasting joy or contentment or even happiness, which is also fleeting, but I think is a byproduct of something healthier than just pure hedonistic pleasure, right? Now, Erwin, I heard you mention on a recent episode of the Battle Ready podcast, which we'll put a link to the podcast in the show notes for folks who want to check it out. You talked about money versus freedom. And I thought this was applicable to Julianne's question here, where actually, do you want to riff on that a little bit?
That's interesting. Thank you for listening. Now I know you actually listen to the podcast. No, and yeah, I think a lot of people. I just had knee surgery, so during the quarantine, I had a couple of accidents. When I busted my face open, so I have 15 stitches in my face, and then I blew out my knee, so I had to have knee surgery. And so I've been going through physical therapy, and I have a young guy who's Japanese who's my therapist, and as we began talking, he said, "Man, I'm just driven by things." Whenever I'm going through therapy, I end up doing therapy for people. I mean, it's always like this. And so he said, "I feel like I'm greedy. I just want more, and whenever I have something, I want more, and I'm never satisfied." And so I said, as he was trying to help me, retrain my knee, I said, "Your problem is that you're more driven by my money than you are by freedom." And like I said, look, I can tell you, I've been extremely poor and I've been extremely wealthy. I've had the spectrum of that human experience, and I feel most content when I feel that I've attained a freedom to be who I long to be, and to express my life the way I long to live it. And there is this odd illusion that more gives you more freedom, but there's actually a break point where if you're driven by more, you lose all your freedom.
Yeah.
And it's this whole idea of living for retirement. I mean, what an idiotic idea.
Yes.
Right? To work all of your life at a job you hate so that you can vacate it when you don't have the energy to live the life you longed for.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a good measuring point to go, well, if I were completely free, like I've asked people, if you had all the money in the world, what would you want your life to look like? And they normally say, I don't know. And so I said, okay, here's the problem. You're trying to get more wealth to live a life you don't even know what it looks like.
Oof.
So you're actually living an illusion of what other people tell you, that if you can attain, you will finally be happy. And so you need to, in my life, I find incredible joy when my family is able to enjoy each other and love each other and have time together, and when we're able to have conflict at a minimal level, and everyone's has a sense of meaning and intention in their life. It isn't measured by money.
No.
And we've had those moments when we had less money. We've had those moments when we've had more money. That's why I don't see money as the enemy of contentment. I think greed is the enemy of contentment.
Yeah.
And I see money as a resource. Just like if the other day, I cooked 6 whole chickens and 6 racks of ribs. I took, on my birthday, I decided to cook all day. And because I thought, oh, what would be the most enjoyable thing to do on my birthday? And I said, like feeding people.
Wow.
Like working all day to create a beautiful experience for people. And I think if we just shift our lives to like the celebration of me isn't everybody bringing me something. The celebration of me is me bringing something to everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's what I would love for people to kind of see, that really what you want to do is you want to be in that pocket where you're actually positioned to live freely, being the person you long to be, and your resources become a conduit of all the good you long to do.
Yes. Well, Julianne, I hope we can send you a copy of one of Erwin's books. What book should we send her?
Well, I think maybe The Way of the Warrior, Soul Cravings.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, maybe Soul Cravings. We'll figure it out. Well, Aaron will pick it out.
We're going to send you one.
Actually, I think Soul Cravings would be good.